Thor too but they don't really use him that much.
Really?
Yeah, the DC has a bunch
Well,
of
that's a
gods as
shame.
well.
But in Marvel's case, everything about Thor is an admission that he's based off of Nordic mythology.
Right.
Up to
Like
and including his name.
Well, except for the fact
And
that
his
Thor
powers. And the name of his hammer.
in
And
the Nordic myth was black haired.
Yes, as was Odin.
As was Odin, exactly. Odin was the great betrayer. He wasn't the good all father. He was the great betrayer of warriors.
Yep. I hated Norse mythology. I enjoyed the stories. I hated reading them because
they're rough.
You read Greek mythology and then you go to Norse mythology, it's like, come on, man. What are we doing here?
Yeah, it didn't seem
you have to write it this way. It's awesome. The stories are awesome, but it's just the prose is like
it's
so tedious. So tedious.
It's how the language.
My favorite is Egyptian mythology, though. That is by far my favorite.
I'm a fan.
I'm a big fan. Big fan of everything Egypt.
The only thing I really wanted to ask Damien, by the way, it wasn't really that I wanted to ask him anything. It was just about the picture of the picture of Spider-Man and what was it? A picture of Spider-Man and Jesus or something like that. But you missed the whole religious conversation we had when you were gone.
Okay. Right, there was a mimetic little meme cartoon that laid out books in humanity and the influences that the books or the written word has on humans. And if I recall the meme that you're referencing, it takes the book like the Quran and says, here's proof that Allah is real and exists. And then it takes the Bible and says, here, this is proof God exists. This is the book. And then it takes a highly influential comic book and says, hey, here's proof Spider-Man exists, is real.
Right.
And I really, really like this mimetic takeaway on the power of word and I said before the influence that language has on our minds, because it's, you read a book and in your own language, you take these collisions of air molecules or these sounds and the voice and the word, and you make an image of light inside your mind. And that is an amazing experience that should not be just glossed over. So
our brains are trained to think in images, not in language. The important thing to note is, I like your description of these images as images of light. That's kind of neat. But your supposition is that everything is translated back into imagery. What if we had a language that simply was imagery, and was that? And comic books sort of straddles the line between images and literature, and
I agree.
That there's actually a good. What is that? What is that book by McLeod-ish? Understanding Comics or something like that.
You're talking about the like the seminal book about comics.
Yes.
I can't think of the name off, and I think it is Understanding Comics. It's something along those lines.
By Scott McLeod, and I definitely recommend it to all the people in this channel right now with us, including Emily, who's falling asleep.
Oh no, I'm not falling asleep. I was reading something.
Okay,
what was it called?
Understanding Comics by Scott McLeod.
All right.
Just
now,
like
by the way, we're not trying to say that Spider-Man is real by recommending that book.
No.
What do you mean he's not real?
The movies kind of make him real, right? If
Hollywood, okay.
Hollywood makes them real. Now, I have little cousins who dress up like Spider-Man.
Well, it brings to question to the pragmatist or the pragmatics or the realism, the realist. What is real? And it's become such an existential concept that you could go as far as saying, well, it's a decision in consciousness, and what is consciousness? And that's something even at the frontier of psychology, you have to wonder.
I gotta disagree with you, Damien, but I'm gonna let you make your point.
Okay, no, my point ends up being that consciousness is something that's still being studied. it's the frontier of psychology, is the origins of consciousness and what it is. And that's why I say when we look at these things that influence our perception of what is real, I feel important to share an energetic connection with many possibilities at once. And maybe even as a final takeaway on that is, I'll believe and think of some very impossible things in this world. And this lets me stand close to things that are nearly impossible, like becoming a billionaire, nearly impossible. But as long as I believe in something even more ridiculous and even more impossible than being a billionaire, then I can approach being a billionaire with a few stepping stones. But if I don't believe in anything wild or ridiculous, and I don't let my mind explore and expand to the realm of infinite possibilities, then I may never get to those next to impossible things because I'm so caught up in the what is possible perspective. So that's a little where I'm coming from there. I believe Spider-Man is real. It's a belief.
So I think that what you're saying now might be contrary to what you were describing with the mimetic. I don't think that they co-sign each other. So the mimetic ultimately, while it may ask the question that you said that is asking, that may be one of the things that it serves to, a purpose that it serves. It ultimately takes the former, which is like the Quran, and juxtaposition with the Spider-Man comic book. It creates a situation where the latter criticizes the former negatively. That's what it does first and foremost.
It right off the bat, I agree that it does appear to be a criticism suggesting that the Quran and the Bible are no more than just really in-depth comic books. But then if you take the other opposing viewpoint, and you know, I'd come from a place of many opposing views, that it's actually saying that the comic book could be powerful in the right hands. If you put it in the right hands and you use the mythology and you use the stuff, because there are some comic books that explain mythos, that explain deep mythological human concepts, and in the hands of the right reader, this can open their mind up to many possibilities and even teach them family values and moral codes and ethics.
Damien?
Oh, sorry.
Damien? No. I don't want to cut you off. I respect what you're saying, but what you're saying to me sounds like really? Like, this is not what memes do. Like the meme doesn't expect the subscriber to be able to deep dive. I get what you're saying because me and you are having this conversation, but in passing on Facebook or in social media, the purpose of that meme does not compel the subscriber to do this deep dive. Right,
well, that's why I shared it as a personal message, knowing.
Yeah, no. I enjoyed it. You saw I laughed at it. I enjoyed it, but we had a conversation about. We had a different conversation about how liberals and conservatives, how conservatives criticize religion, predominantly Islam, and how liberals, both negatively, criticize religion, predominantly Christianity. And me and Mike had like this deep conversation, at which point I brought up that meme among other things that have been shared with me from other people as an example. Not that I didn't enjoy it, not that I didn't think it was funny, because I did. Yeah. But it was one of many examples. I also gave him an example where a friend of mine had taken Optimus Prime and juxtaposed him next to Jesus, and then listed all of the qualities of both, and then concluded that Optimus Prime was more benevolent than Jesus. And so it was just a bunch of different examples that I had given Mike, because we were having a conversation the other day about.
You know, I think I didn't catch that one. I mean, I know you said it, but I told
you Josh did it.
Remember, I didn't catch that one as much, but that one's more interesting because that one I don't think is it's not like necessarily dismissive, right? It's like showing you that for all intents and purposes, like Optimus Prime is like a pretty benevolent person. Like some of the
but my point in that conversation wasn't that it was dismissive, that it was negatively critical. Like you're taking a fictional character and juxtaposing it next to someone that people believe is not fictional.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So on some level, the purpose that is served is to harm or on some level indirectly make certain people feel a certain way.
Right.
Well, we don't want to make marginalized people feel certain ways. I certainly don't want to make Jewish people feel a certain way. I certainly don't think it's okay to make Islamic people feel a certain way.
Well,
it's not okay to make anyone feel a type of way.
Christians aren't marginalized in the U.S.
That's why I didn't just say marginalized people. I then went on to say Islamic people, Jewish people, just people. I'm just giving different examples of people. Whether Christians are marginalized or not really isn't the point. When juxtaposed next to the other groups I mentioned.
Right. Well, for those doing the criticizing, it matters though. But I was going to say, Jesus may be a poor example because he's a pretty benevolent character, but I would see someone using that example to maybe criticize like God or something, which I have to be I think there has to be room for like criticism of gods, right? Because it's like
I think there has to be room for criticism of and I don't disagree. I've always said to you that yes, we should critically question these things. But what is, again, like I said to you the other day, what is your intention? What is your motivation? Is it to do so for the purposes of like offending somebody?
Well, in my case, it would be to make someone think and to make them rethink, right? Because like we've all been raised with certain beliefs, whether we wanted to or not. And, some people have been raised on white supremacy, right? And it's not like these people wanted to be raised on this thing, but they were. And religion is one of these things that's often forced on people. And like to look at a God who is simultaneously like jealous, wrathful, loving, willing to like destroy his creation, and like has all of these like hypocrisies and all of these things which kind of like negate each other. I think there's a purpose in that, and I think it can be done in a way to make people think. Now, at the end of the day, you might just say,
what would be your motivate? Why would you want someone to think otherwise?
It's not about think. It's not about think otherwise. I don't do the binary.
Or to
thing.
even think about it differently.
Because I want people to think about what they're using as their litmus test for what's good, what's evil, and what they've been conditioned to think. Right?
How do you know that that's what? But how do you know that they're using that as the litmus test?
Well, let me just finish because I'm never gonna get my point across this way. So, like for some people, it's this idea that for some people it might be the idea that maybe it's not the religion itself, maybe it's the way that it's been brought to me. Like Matt was saying, like. Maybe it's the way it's been translated or transliterated or the way that we're not looking at the original Hebrew source material. It could just be that. Like it's just a poor translation, like what you guys were saying earlier. Maybe it's just a literal translation.
I think you're losing me.
What do you mean?
Oh, because I was just curious as to why you wanted to change the way people think, and I think you're just telling me what you think some people think.
Well, I mean, this is how I'm getting to my point. So I don't know, like, It's not a one sentence answer. I mean, my point is that if you just go along with what you've been like fed or raised with, you might get some like negative images, or you might not get a complete story. So by making people think and rethink what they've been taught, you might teach people critical thinking, or you might get them to open their mind. Would be my succinct way of saying it.
So you're saying that you would like to get people to critically think about their beliefs or open their mind about their beliefs?
To open their minds about what they've been taught. I mean, beliefs is a tricky word, because you might find out that there might be some beliefs under the beliefs, right? Like some beliefs are developed more, and some beliefs are just like followed as like what you've been taught, right? Like when you're young and you start asking questions in Sunday school, and they say, all right, Ish, like, stop asking so many questions. The Bible is the Bible. That's what it says. That's what we're taught. That's what we're going to go with. And you're kind of like, okay. But like young Ish, like, you know, might have like some thoughts about that, and might like start reading on their own and trying to figure stuff out. Whereas, you know, young Mark might just go with what he's been told, and he might just be like, what do you mean, Ish? That's what they told us. That's what it says. And then so maybe someone comes along and like asks them some questions, or like makes them rethink. Like, you ever wonder why God is simultaneously like this loving God, but also vengeful, and like why he like basically committed, you know, genocide on his own creation? Do you ever wonder about that? Now you'd be like, well, you know, my God is an awesome God, and I don't ascertain those questions, or it's bigger than us. I don't, you know, it's not for me to wonder.
So what it sounds like to me is what you're describing to me is what groups of Christians do to people who aren't Christians, which I personally don't think is cool when religious people do it to people who aren't religious or spiritual, try to impose or change or inspire them to think a different way than what they just think or believe, as long as it's not negatively impacting people. Like, that's what sounds like what you're describing to me.
It's not an imposition. It's a
conversation. No, I'm just saying no, I know, but I think I feel some type of way when like people who subscribe to religion do it to people who don't. So I
proselytize.
Right. And I think it's the same. It's just from a perspective of someone who isn't religious.
Well, here's the difference is, you know, someone like me who poses that question, and I mean, you're right. I'm like sensitive to people's beliefs, so I'm probably, you know, that's not something that I'm going to be doing often. I'm certainly not going door to door. I mean, if you want to like, you know, say that this is like just as bad as that, or that is just as bad as that. Like last time I never saw a bunch of agnostics or atheists going door to door trying to get people to become agnostics or atheists. Mm-hmm. Or I never saw a bunch of atheists or agnostics turning people away from like, you know, getting help because people wouldn't profess.
Well, like I'm not co-signing that. I literally just said that to you. I just didn't say get specific.
Right, but I'm saying in this whole like one thing is as bad as the other, I'm saying that like one group doesn't go as hard as the other, right? Like I've never seen.
Well, I think they do.
That's fine,
just,
and you have that
media.
Opinion, but
it's in different ways, though.
It's in different ways.
I come from a communist country. I can attest to you that that's not the case.
But
well, in this country, they certainly don't. But I mean, you know.
Here's the thing: is that
I hear you about your country though. I mean, we don't have people going door to door, telling people to become agnostic or atheists here. We just don't. We have religious people who do it all the time.
well, yeah, we have Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses and Mormons, but I think like here's the big thing is that you got like the
It's
is
like
that you
saying
got, like, the
cops
Jehovah's
kill white
Witnesses.
people too. Neither is okay.
But here's the thing, it's like you've got the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons knocking on the doors, and you've got like, people turning you away from like a Catholic hospital or like all sorts of other like religious organizations turning non-religious people away. And maybe coming from the other direction, like you say, you don't have like the agnostic hospital turning away the Catholic person, or you don't have atheists or pagans banging on people's doors, but it's kind of
interesting.
Shame people. But hang on, I'm not done. But atheists and agnostics kind of shame people who are religious for being religious, assuming that they're not smart or that they've been brainwashed, and that's a form of prejudice in its own right and peer pressure.
The whole idea of inspiring people to critically think as if they haven't.
Bill Maher. Why I despise him, because he lumps us all into one category that's easy to chop down.
Monolith.
Which is what I wanted to say. It's easy to conflate organization that calls himself Christian with and say, well, I want to talk to this person because that hospital doesn't accept Christians, or because these people from this church go knock on people's doors. So I want to change or perhaps inspire you to think because of what I've seen examples of. Like it's like saying all black people eat watermelon because I saw a black person eating a watermelon.
Here's the difference. With what I'm saying, like inspiring people, there are people who have basically spoken to people who have been inspired and who have, become agnostic or atheist because they took in a lot of information. So this idea that like it's condescending to like say that you can have a conversation with someone and open someone's mind. I mean, you're basically talking to someone who went through that very process.
I don't think I implied anything about being condescending.
Okay. So whatever the negative implication about opening someone's mind by talking to someone about this stuff, or about trying to like open someone's mind to this stuff. For some people, like that's how they've gotten their information. They've had like these discussions. They were like very philosophical discussions, and they thought about this stuff and they formed their own opinion, but they started like going through like these questions like one by one and started like really thinking. Like for some people it's just about creation, like a god. Like what is a god? Is a god some a being that has always been around from the beginning, like billions of years ago, and has created everything and then looks after creation, interfering in creation and trying to like push creation towards a certain thing? Or is it just an original creator that just sits back and sees where it's going to go for billions of years after that? And if that's what it is, then is it really this concept of a god, or is it more of just a creator like a mother or a father is, that no longer has any...
But shouldn't that be something that you explore for yourself?
Having those kinds of discussions,
having discussions with people is how I explore these things.
Yeah,
like
but
that's how I got the information.
The difference between having a discussion and having somebody tell you that you're wrong, or speak to you in a way like that you made where it seems like they're making the assumption that you haven't thought for yourself. Because that's what I think is the issue.
Yeah, that would be negative.
Let me interject here. Carl Sagan. How many people are familiar with Carl Sagan?
I'm familiar with him.
Yes.
Carl Sagan.
Who's Carl Sagan?
He's an astrophysicist who
Hold
was
on.
basically like
What's an astrophysicist?
Like Neil deGrasse Tyson before
Neil
Neil
deGrasse Tyson.
I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Jesus.
Mike knew right away.
Jesus, I fell for it.
No, go on,
Anyway,
Raul.
so Carl Sagan put out one of his Cosmos episodes on something called the Flatlanders. And Flatlanders was about the beings in the fourth dimension, which is we live in multiple dimensions. We're a multidimensional reality. And the fourth dimension is something that is I would like to say above, but that's not correct. That's not really correct. It's something that overlays our reality, and he talked about the way that a fourth dimensional being would talk to us, which are in the three-dimensional beings. And if you look at it with a critical eye and with the eye of this going on, if you're a religious person or a person of that at least is open to religious ideas, then this sounds very familiar. Some of the things like the burning bush could be explained. Some of the things like incarnation of gods could be explained. And it was very enlightening to watch this not too long ago, like 5 years ago. And
hold on, Raul. I think I have a disconnect. Like I don't know how you got from communication from the fourth dimension to where we're at right now. I think like there's some part of the chain.
Well, because Flav was talking about what is a god? What is God? What is God?
No. I mean, in your description, you were saying that if we look at it from a critical eye.
If you look at it from the eye of a religious person or a person that believes in something a little more than that, then Carl Sagan's explanation makes total sense.
But what was his explanation?
His explanation was that it's long. It's like a 2-hour long documentary, and it's just him at a table. It's not very exciting, but the ideas are exciting. The ideas are that they would communicate through energy, through thoughts that imprint on the mind, that their communication would seem like all inspiring revelations of religious text, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Perhaps that is more in line with what somebody like Flav is asking about the nature of God. Maybe God is not because God was actually interpreted in the early Hebrew Bible as Elohim, many, it means, and we could only assume that this creature, this thing, is a being of the fourth dimension at this point.
Elohim, one for many.
One for many.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure that that's getting to what my question. My question was, is God simply just a creator, or is he this like interferer that's supposed to help things go along well?
I thought your question was rhetorical.
I think it depends on the person and what you believe. Like, I think God is up to the interpreter.
I don't believe. Let me be very serious for a moment. I don't. My personal beliefs is that we don't. There's no such thing as a supernatural. There are things that are unexplained at the moment, but our science is quickly catching up, and we will see something in the future that can explain next to everything. But if God is a creature that can be quantifiable, I believe that it will be discovered to be something that is in this fourth dimension that I was talking about.
See, I don't really go into my beliefs. What I choose not to do though is impose them on people.
Yeah, I'm not imposing. I'm just saying.
No, not you. I'm just like I was just speaking up for me. Like I choose not to impose them on
Speaking
people.
in the general sense.
Right, in a general sense, I choose not to allow. Like I don't try to change how people think. I don't try to. I don't like to. And not only that, I don't let it cloud my judgment or my ability to critically think on things.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot
And
with
go
belief.
on.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, Damien, please.
I was gonna say with belief, it's oftentimes belief is looked at as something that limits your perspective. When you believe in something, oftentimes you've settled for or compromised for another idea, and you didn't explore it further. You just believed it, and that was good enough. And that's why when you take something like an idea versus a belief, you can see some human growth and development. When I was even saying before, like, I believe Spider-Man is real, well, I can just leave it at that. But if I get into the idea of it, like, well, what is a Spider-Man? Or what are the events surrounding the story of Peter Parker, or the story that creates these things? Or then even going into something like God, like, I could believe that there is a god or a goddess or an omnipotent, omniscient being. But if I get into the idea of, well, what is an omnipotent, omniscient being? Now it's like we have a means of discussion. So belief oftentimes can end up limiting or halting a conversation or discussion. And I think that it's cool to even reflect on some of what Raul was saying with this fourth dimensional, fourth density idea, because it gives the idea of a discussion. It could even be something as simple as saying, like, well, what is a dream? And what are we experiencing in these dreams? Do these dreams, just like anything else, serve meaning and purpose? And that could even touch back to a little bit what Flavius is saying here with the idea of what is God. Is God meaning and purpose, this omnipotent entity, or is it just the bow that shot the arrow into space and just watched, like a parent figure, like a parent that holds
a distant
back,
parent, yeah,
and just watches it flourish, and and learns, observes itself. We can't dismiss, as humans, we truly are some finely tuned observational instruments. We see it in a very finely tuned spectrum of light, and it's a huge electromagnetic spectrum to begin with. So to look at the perceptive details of our existence and kind of embrace the idea of what purpose and meaning is, that's where I feel there is the idea of these otherwise difficult concepts that we could just leave as a belief, but as you're saying, like, to impose a belief on someone is difficult. To share an idea with somebody can be fun, but also dangerous. People have been killed for dangerous ideas.
Well, I will say that people who practice or subscribe to religions, and especially there's a level of fanaticism where they certainly, even as Mike said and as you just said, while it may be difficult, they certainly do go out of their way to impose their beliefs on people, and all the way up to legislation.
Dominion, yeah.
So
they certainly
Exactly.
do. They that's something I'm not discounting, because they do, and I'm not cool with it.
I was going to say that,
So
in some cultures,
and even co-sign what Mike said, because they do, and they will try to impose their beliefs on people, and if they can't get you to subscribe to what they're saying to you, they'll try to do it legislatively. One of the things that I criticize Christians for, I told a friend of mine this some weeks ago, the problem with Christians is that they don't vote against things that they don't believe. Against things that are wrong. They always vote for things that they believe. So they'll vote, in many cases, for the one guy who supports the one anti-abortion, even though everything else that he does is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but
they'll vote against their own economic interests.
He's against gay marriage, so I'm voting for him. Wait a minute. How many Christians embrace Donald Trump? And nothing about this dude is like,
yeah, he's
nothing about this dude. at
I mean,
all.
These are
It's
not follow
representative
the
of what you
commandments.
say you believe. You know what I mean?
Matt, I don't know if you mentioned in a previous reflection, has a lot of experience with churches and the imposition of belief. I don't know if he has. I see he's moving around a bit. But
I just wanted to squeeze in really quick.
Yeah,
Like in some cultures, it's cool to ask people these questions, including strangers. It's just like asking these philosophical questions is a way to get to know someone, but certainly in some cultures, it's not. Some cultures, like, people do not want their religion questioned. People do not want to have a philosophical conversation about their religion, and that's fine. But I've certainly been in, situations where I've like really enjoyed thinking about these things in like totally new ways because someone like, didn't mind.
So like you and I have had conversations where you've asked me questions and I went on a long explanation of things, especially some months back when we were first doing the show, and I remember a conversation we had in particular. So I just want to say that your position and where you're coming from and everything that you're saying, I genuinely and generally agree with. I do. What I was saying, just to make it so I highlight the differences. What I'm saying and what I'm critical of is when people. That's why I say intent and motive. When people intend or pretend to be doing what you're genuinely doing, and then they preface their questions with things that are offensive, negative, make caricatures out of someone's belief. You understand what I'm saying? In order to have these conversations or provoke this type of thinking.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
You know how I feel about certain people like the Bill Maher's and
Right.
Says the person who talked about the babies in the baskets.
Yeah, that was me. I want to put all the Mexican babies in baskets and send them back across the river.
Oh, ish.
I'm convinced. No, you did that because you wanted to see how far you could push.
You missed that show, Raul. You didn't know that happened.
I didn't. I heard about the show, but I didn't hear about it was Mexican babies. I just thought it was random.
It was the Dreamers. No, it was the Dreamers.
The Dreamers and
she's
babies.
like, what do we do? I'm like, listen, put them in baskets, give them a stipend, a couple pieces of bread, and push them across the river.
And this whole time, I'm trying not to get angry. When I think, meanwhile, you're trying to see what you have to say to get me angry.
Mike
is a trickster. Ish is a trickster.
You mean like fucking Moses?
Mike had the best line. He's like, they put Moses in the basket. You got a problem with Moses?
Yeah, like,
so
what the fuck?
He's like, you got a problem with Moses?
Meanwhile, I'm just like, guys, you're sounding awfully xenophobic right now.
Yo, she was trying her best to keep her composure. She's like, this is sounding awfully xenophobic. I'm like, what? The basket? pushing babies across the river. I'm like, yeah, just round them all up.
It's okay. You got Hurricane Emily at a later point.
None of this was serious. We were just playing devil's advocate with Emily.
I know. Now I know that.
Something interesting to make things more of a discussion with religious sanctions, I'll call them, because it kind of separates people from talking about it. Many religions don't even like to use the word God in and of itself, or the mentionings of their figures, or even the depiction or illustration of some of their figures may be found offensive and are heavily rejected. But to take something interesting like Thanos is a very interesting character in the comic book world, and I like making a comparison with Thanos and the Death Star and thinking like, well, which one is more powerful, Thanos or the Death Star? Both, serve a role in destroying planets and taking life away. And it's a curious question that really brings in life and intention and what is the purpose of, the Death Star is in some respects.
Thanos is certainly more benevolent.
Right. Well, so because the Death Star is playing a role in politics a little bit, and Thanos is playing a role in, could you say religion? Could Thanos be his own religious?
Well, he is a
figure?
god by all rights. In the Marvel universe, he's considered a godlike figure.
Yeah,
Right.
he's an abstract entity.
Not just for his power, but for the position he holds.
So what's interesting is when I drew this comparison through a few opposing viewpoints, because originally I wanted to compare Thanos to God itself through the books and their teachings, but that became kind of edgy with some people. So I dialed back to, well, all right, let's throw Thanos in comparison with the Death Star, and it became a science versus religion moment. And in the poll, just to give you guys a little poll example, the Death Star ends up being more powerful as a planet destroyer, but when it comes to toe-to-toe, head-to-head, Thanos destroys the Death Star, and the Death Star cannot destroy Thanos. So it's a really interesting thing. More people end up agreeing, in this case, the representation of science does destroy planets more for what its purpose and intent is, but Thanos, the religious value or the god, has more versatility to him and has more.
I would say though that the one thing that you're missing from your analogy is that the Death Star is a threat. Thanos is a promise. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's some nuances there too, because Thanos is also wise enough not to do the worst thing.
Yes.
Meaning, you know, like if you look at the whole movie with the Infinity Gauntlet, what a lot of people don't know is that after that whole thing went down in the comics, Thanos was then entrusted as a member of the Infinity Watch.
Wow.
Because he knew what could be done with the gems, and so he was wise enough to know not, to take that course again or allow anyone else to take that course. So he was one of the members of the Infinity Watch.
And Marvel loves his redemption stories. Marvel absolutely loves redemption stories, which I like. This is part of the reason I like Marvel more.
And one other note too. There's an interesting comparison. Marvel does have its equivalent to God.
Yes.
Okay.
Known as the one above all.
Really, that's a character.
Yeah, it's a little Stan Lee insertion, because Stan Lee is, of course, a very excuse me, I'm sorry, it's still fresh. He was a very devout Jew. So
yeah. So in Marvel, there's a hierarchy of what is known as abstract entities, and while to the common person in comic books and outside of comic books, Thanos would be at the top. There's like 20 or 30 beings that are well over Thanos.
The Tribunal, Beyonder, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, death, eternity, infinity.
I was wondering, where would, we were talking about Hydra before. Hive is the mythical character or the inhuman character associated with Hydra, if I'm remembering correctly. Where would Hive stand as far as comparison power to someone like Thanos?
Hive.
I mean, I
I don't know who Hive is.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Hive. So, like in the formation of Hydra, and again, my comic book knowledge is actually strangely scattered. I mean, I literally had all my comic books ripped up and scattered and torn as a kid by a friend I brought over. Yeah, it
Girlfriend issues?
No. It was a friend
Sorry,
I had over.
What? Sorry, I wasn't listening.
Yeah, it's okay. No. I'm just saying my comic book knowledge is a reflection of like physically, what happened to my comic books. I had a fair collection that just got destroyed by a friend who went through some kind of fit. I don't know, bipolar psychosis type fit. He just like destroyed them all, like ripped them apart, put other parts and pieces. It was the strangest thing. I did forgive him, and I overcame the emotional loss of comic books. It kind of was like a strange lesson on materialistic value in my life at a young age, but my knowledge of comic books have kind of also been a little scattered as a result. Hive, I believe, was a character that members of Hydra, as though Hydra were some kind of cult,
Bless you,
they
my
were
friend.
trying to bring bless it.
Bless you.
They were trying to bring Hive to Earth, to take over Earth as some kind of
Yeah.
inhuman, like almost virus, you could say, in some respects, and that Hive would take over the planet. They never succeeded, if I remember correctly. Many sacrifices and critical characters died, preventing the insertion of Hive. But this character seemed like a god or a super powerful interdimensional space alien.
So the problem with Hive,
Yeah.
Hive is powerful on a given instance, but relatively weak because Hive can improve the host that he has to have a host body, and he can improve the host, but he can't do like impossible things. Like he can't, if the host can't fight, he can't fight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whereas Thanos is like an abstract entity. So what Marvel does is they don't call them gods. Once you get to a certain level or on a certain level of power, they call them abstracts.
Oh.
Things that are not quantifiable, right? They literally say things like power, reality manipulation, nth degree.
Okay.
Which pretty much means you can do whatever you want. You understand what I'm saying? Like literally,
Yeah.
They'll say, reality manipulation to the nth degree would be some of the descriptions for the power levels of like abstracts. Thanos does not have that, doesn't even have reality manipulation to the nth degree. Thanos can't manipulate reality at all.
Okay.
He has cosmic power that is beyond the scope of most life forms on most planets' understanding.
Yeah.
For sure. But he can't manipulate, whereas like the entity that he is in love with, that he does everything for and serves, Death, she can. She is the embodiment of death. She's Death. Eternity, for instance, who is her brother.
So the woman is the woman is the embodiment of death.
She's Death. I mean, that's just the form she takes. She can be whatever she wants to be. She chooses to look like a female Grim Reaper. Eternity looks like the universe in the shape of a bipedal being. But he literally, if you look at him, you see the cosmos in his body. These are beings that are far above Thanos. Just without an infinity gauntlet, they're far above Thanos. And Thanos is far above most of the Marvel universe.
So Thanos is shooting above his, he's kind of, trying to play with someone who's on a greater level than he is.
Say again?
He's kind of like, he's not on her level.
Death.
So so the story with Death and Thanos is one of the best stories.
In love with Deadpool.
Yeah, she is. That's why Deadpool can't die. But the thing is, so Thanos has been in love with Death. He loves her, and she never says a word to him. We don't know if she likes him. We don't know if she tolerates him. She never says a word with him. We do know that every time Thanos dies, he gets resurrected because she doesn't want him either. She doesn't want him to be with her, or she really cares about him and wants him to live. But we don't know because she never acknowledges him ever. Like he doesn't ever speak to him. Like he snapped half the universe away to appease her. You see what I'm saying? Like everything that he does is he's trying to win her heart, and she's never acknowledged him. One time she acknowledged him. There was a situation that was called the Annihilation Wave. I don't know if you remember this, Raul, but like the universe was being destroyed by this other. There was this other existence that was like this negative existence, and it didn't know death. No one ever died in this existence, and it was eating away at the mainstream Marvel universe. And in order to defeat it, Thanos went there and killed himself. And the moment he died, Death was able to exist there. Whoa. And she just destroyed she destroyed it all. and then brought Thanos back to life. But that's how Thanos saved like the Marvel universe. He kind of went there and killed himself, thus allowing
the sin of not death. Like,
yeah, he goes there and kills himself so that he could introduce death to that existence.
Wild.
And then she just killed everything. Everything in that existence, she just killed it.
Also, I don't know if she's already mentioned this. I had to take a little break, but Thanos is interesting because he's one of the few people in direct contact with an abstract as a sentient being, and that's an interesting thing. I wonder if they're going to bring it up in the Avengers later on.
I thought they were going to use Gila as the death that he was,
yes,
that he was in love with.
Yes,
from Thor.
From Thor, yes. That would have been interesting as well.
Because she's the Norse god of death. However, she's only able to be the Norse god of death because the abstract entity death allows her to be.
Right.
See, this is interesting, like mythology to talk about, and it's really opening us up to talk about life and death principles. And this is why I really appreciate comic books for what they do and what they bring to life and offer us.
Well, I did want to say to you really quick, and then I'm going to see the floor. I wanted to say to you really quick, Damien, that when we were talking about your meme, from the purpose that it serves outright to just the casual subscriber, it does serve that purpose. For our conversation, it serves a different purpose that I respect and appreciate. But we can only get there through conversation by you telling me you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's conversation is the key ingredient. Open, honest communication is the key to the development of human growth.
It's the key to everything.
God knows there's not enough open, honest communication these days.
Oh, that's always what you'll always get for me.
And
to the point where I'm a
jerk. I thought we would get lewd stories of your high school life.
Guys, in the spirit of open communication and shit,
I need
to communicate y'all. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew.
It was good to meet you as well.
Good to meet you.
All right, my gray zone friend. Will we see you again?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
But I have to go.
Good night, bro.
Yeah, you look dead, my friend.
Yeah,
it's the wine. It's the red wine.
Got a lot of essential work.
Red wine.
6 a.m. wake up.
Yeah, Mike, sing him off with red wine.
There you go.
Thanks, brother. Yeah.
Damien, you can sing too, huh?
I could sing a little bit.
Oh no, don't.
My hand.
We're not starting this again.
We're not gonna do Crazy Okie tonight. But now that I know,
it's always coming back to like, who has what in their hands. When you put good tools in the hands of good people, they make good things. But we get into a little good bad paradigm because the thing is just a thing, the tool is just a tool, and the person is a person. A book in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use it or maybe intends on misusing it, I mean, they can extract or cherry pick whatever principles out that they want to suit whatever agenda or narrative they have to push. And that's why I stress frequently about how we are affected by corporate sponsorships, religious sanctions, and political protections, because these things limit our open, honest communications. They close down some of the openness, and they take away or sometimes inundate us with too much information to be honest about, like things that I'd have to say, I don't have a very good opinion on this because there's too much to look into at the moment or not enough information to add.
What about the Force as a religion? Have you heard about that?
That's what George Lucas has tried to avoid forever. He honestly he did because he realized that it was such a powerful concept that people would try and follow it. And so in like New Zealand, the Force literally has like 20,000 adherents. They name it as their official religion.
Yep.
Interesting.
And as an official religion, they get all recognized rights?
Yes, yes.
And do they have a church and everything?
I haven't investigated that far, but I do know that there's people that ascribe themselves as Force adherents.
Yeah, I've heard
it's
of
like
that.
people who subscribe to the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah, but more serious. They're serious about their devotion to the Force. The Church of the Spaghetti Monster is just to make fun of religion.
Right.
Yeah. The some of the principles of the Jedi Code or the foundation of the Force as a religion
It's Buddhist.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's borrowing from, cherry picking some information from some very strong and very powerful statements. Again, in the hands of the wrong people, can really go in the wrong direction.
But that's when you have the Sith Church, Damien.
But I was gonna say, have they founded a Sith religion?
Yeah, but there's only 2 of them, so it's fine.
Someone will.
Two at a time.
They haven't already.
2 at a time.
It's usually the Sith were a result of heresy, master and apprentice that left the council. So technically, the Sith are Jedi. It's just that they don't subscribe to a council.
Actually, both traditions are in the lore of the Star Wars universe. Both adherents are groupings of people that were in a former group called the Jedi, which was with an AI, and so they were they were the ones that Luke alludes to in the Last Jedi.
Because the Jedi, interestingly enough, and this might add to your thinking on this in a good way, Damien, the Jedi AI were oppressive. While they were benevolent, but their tenets were oppressive, right? You couldn't subscribe to all of the emotions that humans are passionate about, like passion, love, which caused the sect of Sith to leave.
Yes, I mean, literally that alone was a part of the code, is that there is no emotion. Emotion doesn't even exist. It is just a lack of peace. And the only thing that exists is peace. So
I will tell you that I openly wear my Sith code T-shirt everywhere, and people question me, and I go, "Well, what do you think? Take a read." And they read it, and they're like, "Hey, I agree with that. That's well, you're Sith. That's the reason."
Yeah, it's interesting to think too. Like, there's a lot of people forming around Satanist or satanic church cult followings that say, well, these principles apply to the modernity or the way we live our lives. You can't argue through religious sanctions. It limits your ability to debate. That's why the open discussion becomes so important, and to bring the individual back to some sense of transparent accountability, where we can step away from these subscriptions, these beliefs that can oftentimes limit our ways we interact with each other, outside of whatever church or following or whatever idol or whatever worship or practice that may interfere with our human growth and development. It's fascinating. What a great point to have brought up that. I mean, if we were to form our own church, what would it be like? If we were to form our own temple, what would it look like? If we had our own religious doctrine, what would it say?
I'd be Benny Jesuit.
What's that?
I'd be Benny Jesuit.
Benny Jesuit?
From Dune.
It'll make more sense in about a year when the movie releases.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So the movie will do a lot to it'll do to Dune what the Lord of the Rings movies by Peter Jackson did for Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Or when you watch the On That Ish episode where we
talk about it like extensively. Yeah.
Shameless plug, huh, Mike? Shameless plug.
Emphasis on the shameless, right?
Is that already an episode I missed, or is
yes, it is an episode.
Yes. Okay.
It was just me.
There's probably 2, but
yeah.
Implying that anybody who hears this should listen to that too.
And Dune will come up again.
Okay. Yeah, I notice in my feed these pop up. Sometimes the ones that go into 2 and 3 hours, I'll end up skipping through or multitasking, or I end up getting onto a playlist. I did notice the 40-minute or the hour-long ones are more digestible just as input. as a listener myself.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's I appreciate that. We try to take the ones that go hours long and break them up into hours.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's coming along.
But that's
I
new.
like this cast. It's a pleasure being a part of and reflecting
Yeah,
back
it's,
on.
I have had not this much fun